Today, the Department of Justice is announcing a civil lawsuit against the Maine Department of Education. The state of Maine is discriminating against women by failing to protect women in women's sports. Pretty basic stuff. This is a violation of Title IX. The Department of Justice will not sit by when women are discriminated against in sports. This is about sports. This is also about these young women's personal safety. I've met many of these women throughout the past weeks and months, and what they have been through is horrific. We have exhausted every other remedy. We tried to get Maine to comply. We don't like standing up here and filing lawsuits. We want to get states to comply with us. That's what this is about. We have repeatedly notified Maine of its infractions and urged them to remedy the situation to protect women. We've stripped grants from Maine through other departments, and we are going to continue to fight for women. Let me give you some examples. Let me give you a timeline. This timeline, I think, is pretty important. So in February 2024, these are just a few examples. A biological boy started competing in women's ski races and cross-country races in Maine. He came in first in the 5K with a time that would have been 43rd among men. In February 2025, a biological boy won first place in the pole vaulting competition in Maine's indoor track and field meet. He beat every other girl by a significant margin. That qualified him for regional championships. That took a spot away from a young woman in women's sports. Shame on him. February 21st, 2025. President Trump has the governors at the White House. President Trump has the exchange with Janet Mills. He asked her about the issue. Her response, "We'll see you in court." Well, we still didn't sue. HHS and the Department of Ed opened investigations in an attempt to get them to comply. They both found violations. And in March, Maine refused to comply. I want to read you this letter. This is from the Maine Attorney General to the Department of Education. We will not sign the resolution agreement. We do not have revisions or a counterproposal. We agree we are at an impasse. Nothing in Title IX or its implementing regulations prohibits schools from allowing transgender girls and women to participate on girls' and women's sports teams. Well, they must not be reading the same Title IX that we're reading. We believe they are failing to protect women. And it's not only an issue in sports, it is a public safety issue. These boys are allowed to go in women's restrooms. They are allowed to go in the women's dressing rooms and get fully naked and change in biological boys and change clothes in front of these young women. Maine's leadership has refused to comply at every turn. So now we have no other choice. We are taking them to court. What we are seeking an injunction to get them to stop this, stop what they're doing. That's pretty simple. And we are seeking to have the titles returned to the young women who rightfully won these sports. And we are also considering whether to retroactively pull all the funding that they have received for not complying in the past. And I'm so proud of these brave young women standing behind me. I see lots of parents in the front too, and I've met you. Thank you to the parents for supporting your daughters and telling them it's okay to fight back and stand up for what they believe in. Some of these young women have endured vicious injuries too as a result of boys playing in their sports. It's my honor now to introduce to you our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon.
Good morning, everyone. I don't think our case could have been stated any better than it was just presented by our Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And I thank you very much for your participation this morning, and I will echo Attorney General's comments about how brave these women are, these young women. And of course, Riley Gaines has been a staunch advocate for the Title IX infractions, since she came on board. And we're so proud to have Riley out there as such a prominent spokesperson. So today we're announcing a weighty development in the Title IX investigation into the Maine Department of Education. We, the Department of Education, analyzed Maine's Education Department for compliance with Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which prohibits sex-based discrimination in any school or education program that receives federal funding. Unfortunately, our investigation has found that Maine continues to willfully violate Title IX and to strip the civil rights of female athletes in the state. And as Pam alluded as well, it's not just about their civil rights, it's about their safety. And we, after our investigation, we found we really had no other choice. We thought the infractions warranted turning them over to the Justice Department for their further investigation. So how do we get here? On February 5th, President Trump signed the executive order keeping men out of women's sports, which directed all states and educational programs receiving federal funds to cease the practice of allowing males to compete in sports programs for women. They didn't make this up. This is the law. This is Title IX. This executive order was aimed at protecting women like fencer Stephanie Turner or volleyball player Peyton McNabb from being injured and unfairly outmatched by male athletes. President Trump didn't pull any punches. He explicitly warned Maine and Governor Janet Mills that Maine would risk losing federal funding if it continued to allow males to participate in women's sports. Governor Mills chose to openly flout Title IX compliance, telling President Trump, and I'll repeat what the general said, "We'll see you in court," and obviously we are going to. That same day, our Office for Civil Rights opened an investigation into the Maine Department of Education and Maine School Administrative District Number 51 for permitting males and girls sports and denying female-only intimate facilities. The department's investigation confirmed Maine's Title IX violations, and we offered Maine leaders multiple opportunities to change their policy and to protect women in sports, and they have refused. So now as DOJ begins their enforcement actions, I hope Governor Mills will recognize that her political feud with the president will deprive the students in her state of much more than the right to fair sporting events. After all, compliance with federal civil rights law is a universal prerequisite for receiving federal funding. The Trump administration could not be any clearer to all states, sports leagues, and educational institutions. We take the violations of women's civil rights very seriously. I have 3 granddaughters, and I want to make sure that they are treated fairly and that they aren't exposed, in dressing rooms. We want to make sure that if you open women's sports or intimate facilities to males, you expose yourself to federal civil rights investigations. Governor Mills will definitely get her wish. We thank you all for being here this morning. Look forward to seeing you later.
Information, truth, is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.